When I reach 1000 subscribers I will be giving away a $25 Amazon gift card away. To enter, like, subscribe and leave a comment below. Posted by u/Erican89. Hellish client gets what's coming to him. Hey all. So I'm a freelance web developer. Had a guy contact me saying there was a small project he needed help with, stating it should take minutes, and wanted to pay $50. Fair enough. He also states that he needs it done by the end of the day, since he's apparently in a tight spot with his employer, so he needs it done fast. Also fair enough. I'm not going to turn it down just because it's a tight deadline. I get in and find out his previous developer was very sloppy and the code was damn near impossible to read. His site is in Squarespace and a lot of second-rate developers work there, which is fair because it's pretty easy. I tell the client this code is horrible and I need to reform it. Then it turns out the new links that he wanted in there completely broke everything. I told him that it would likely take about 6 hours to get all of this sorted out, and he said that was fine and would compensate me accordingly by my hourly rate of $80/HR. So I finish everything up, tell him the total of $640, and he agrees. Says he can pay me the next day. This "I'll pay you the next day" BS goes on for about 2 weeks, and I try to call him again on the most recent day that he said he'd pay me. Turns out he's now blocked my number. A couple days go by of trying to contact him while still getting nothing. I went to log into the site to cut my losses and delete my work. Turns out he's changed the password. At this point it's clear to me this was planned, so I'm pissed. I email him stating that if I don't hear anything within 48 hours, I'll be serving him court papers and demand of payment to his address that I had to find through an ancestry site, and subsequently call his apartment complex to confirm before I serve some poor sap with random court papers. He doesn't email for 24 hours, and this morning I find out that I'm still logged into his site through the Squarespace app. Clearly this is a huge vulnerability in Squarespace since I changed his password and I was still in on the app. I'll likely report this to them. This is when my revenge comes into play. I created a new email that was his address at protonmail.com, which I then used to sign up for a new Squarespace account with, invite myself a contributor so I can access on desktop as well, and set his live site as password protected. He sees this and is repeatedly emailing and texting me saying he can pay me $250, but $750 now with late fees is just insane and way too much. Now apparently he can pay me on Monday, which I've heard plenty of already. This pissed me off even more, so I stated I would continue adding late fees until he pays up, and that his site will continue to be mine. Now his site is indeed live again, but every page autoplays shitty SoundCloud rappers, and all the links he had me place now take the user to cool math games. I considered Pornhub, but perhaps that's a bit much. I've never done this to other clients, but this dude is a 43-year-old piece of garbage. I should also state that I pride myself in my work and generally run on a very professional level. However, I won't accept no payment and being dicked around for weeks. Posted by u/JoeDabro56. Animal abuser gets sent to the hospital. Background: I worked at a marine biology center in Florida. It was sometime in June, and I was with some other employees and a couple of visitors. We were exhibiting some of the animals we recently rescued. There was a turtle who had been hit by a propeller, a shark who had been cut by another animal, and I was taking care of a stingray who was recovering from being beached in a storm. Enter our animal abuser. This man in about his 30s was in the center visiting with his wife and kids. He was yelling at them about some toy and with the wife about being strict with the kids. He had a typical wife beater look, so they let their kids look around at the turtle, and the mom is on her phone. The guy walks up to me and says, "What you got there?" I say we rescued a stingray who was beached during a storm, which is followed by a laugh as he says, "How dumb does a fish got to be to beach itself?" I didn't really respond to the comment and just said her name's Lucy. He takes a look at Lucy and starts calling her ugly. I don't get what this guy's problem is, but I just keep my comments to myself. He gets too close to the ray though and touches its face. Bad move. The stingray jumps and splashes the guy with water. I laugh, which is stopped by his death stare. "You little bitch," the man says as he punches Lucy right in the face. She is obviously startled by this and swims to the other side of the container. I was furious by now and said, "Hey, what's the matter with you? Punching an innocent animal?" He replies with, "That stupid fuck had it coming." Instead of security taking him out, I figured I'd take matters into my own hands. Now I know this wasn't the best decision, but as I was battling my conscience, I glance over at the man as he's yelling at his kids again. I figure he deserves this. Okay, so this revenge has a lot of factors: luck, deviousness, and my stupid coworker. My coworker was new, and he helped me with the stingray. He didn't realize some stingrays have not one, but two spines to sting with, and only got one. So today he was greeted by me scolding him. I figured I was gonna remove the second spine soon, but then I was distracted by the arsehole who was yelling at the kids. I didn't really forget at this point. It was my key to revenge. I told the man to come over for a second, and he came over. I pointed at something on the ceiling as a distraction, then got Lucy to come over closer to the guy. With one swift movement, I tripped and pushed the guy into the container, causing water to go everywhere and Lucy to freak out. As all the pieces miraculously fell into place, Lucy whipped her tail at the man and sliced him right across his back. For those who don't know, a stingray can easily slice right through clothes. She did, and the man was instantly screaming. The wife looked from her phone, and the kids' eyes darted over as well. There was a bloody panic as the man was on the floor wincing with pain. Blood all over, a screaming wife and bawling kids, and panic from the employees. The paramedics were called, and the guy jumped up and charged me for bumping into him. People were holding him back, and I was doing my best act to be frightened by the incident. He was rushed off. I was questioned by my boss. He believed me, and that was that. The man was in the hospital for a week. He had to get the poison out and needed stitches for his back. You may not see this as nuclear, but it was. If there were complications with the paramedics arriving, he could have bled out. And he tried to sue us for almost killing him, but easily lost, and was countersued for thousands of dollars. Tag on the week in the hospital, and this escalated into a great revenge. Be kind to nature, kids. Posted by u/r_husba. Thieving rumored gets what's coming to him. This got removed from r/pro revenge, but I thought you all might want to read it as it still makes me laugh. So, nuclear it is. So, many years ago, while still a teen, I moved out of my parents' place to live across the street from my junior college. There were many students in the building, so I rented a room in a large basement 3-bedroom unit that was reserved for students at the school. I didn't really know anyone in the building as it was on the other side of the city from where I grew up. At the time there was one other roommate already living in the unit who we'll call Scene. To be kind, Scene was a short fat putz, older than myself by a few years. He was in some kind of simplified remedial program as he'd failed a couple of school years, and mentioned how this was his last chance to make something of himself in his parents' eyes. Kinda dim, not too much going on in his life, but harmless, or so I thought. Anyways, I was hoping to start things off on the right foot with him as he was to be my roommate, so I wanted to be friends. As I was moving in my stuff, he mentioned how he had no money for a moving van. So I offered to do a trip with my rented van to his parents if he needed any help moving some stuff of his. He happily accepted. So we drive to his parents, where I meet his mother and discover that he's from a somewhat affluent family. Somewhat surprising considering he's too broke to hire a van, but whatever. Couple days later I meet his nice girlfriend who lived up the hill from our apartment. Translation: she was extremely affluent. This girlfriend would dote on him, visiting him a lot at our place, to the point where she would regularly hand deliver him delicious meals that had been prepared at her house. This will be important later. Anyways, it slowly becomes apparent that this unassuming guy has a dishonest streak. While moving my stuff in, I'd mentioned that I had a spare waterbed. He immediately offered to buy it, so I moved it in myself and set it up with the agreement he'd pay me a "friend price", around $200 for a $700 bed. Weeks pass, and he keeps giving me excuses about not paying whenever the subject comes up. He then started to randomly shift the narrative to a story about how his wealthy parents can pay for us to get a great condo in a new development just up the street. I remember wondering why his parents would make such an offer despite the fact we've just moved into our current apt. The story didn't make sense. Nevertheless, he constantly tried to set up some visit with me and get me involved. I wasn't really interested in moving again at that point, so I never really pursued it. I learned later that this was not only a lie, but a typical ploy of his. Anyways, as I had just moved out of my old neighborhood, I hadn't opened up a new bank account. This was before internet banking in this new part of town. So I was keeping my money, couple hundred, hidden in my room until I set up an account nearby. I was only loosely keeping track of this money and barely noticed how my money was going a little quickly until one day I go to get my last $40 and it's gone. Unfortunately, by this point a third roommate had moved into our flat, a cool hippie dude from Maritimes. So although I was convinced it was Scene that had robbed me, I wasn't 100% sure. To resolve things as amicably as possible, I decided to give him a chance to come clean. So one night I asked him point blank, fairly casually, if he'd taken my money as I'd noticed a small amount was missing. I'll never forget his reaction. He immediately stiffened, his eyes glazed over, and he blurted out I didn't take anything. It wasn't me, and just stared at me. I was shocked. He didn't just look guilty, his reaction had such a rehearsed quality. I could tell he'd been accused of similar things many times before. I tried my best to be calm, smile and act as if I believed him, but inside I was livid. I couldn't stop thinking about how this guy was trying to play me like a fool. I realized that, although I knew it was him, I couldn't do anything about it as I had no proof. By this point I felt sick to be living in the same space as this guy. I realized to get out of this situation and to deal with this jerk appropriately, I would have to lay a trap to make sure he didn't suspect anything. The next day I was all smiles. Playing dumb, I exclaimed loudly how I hope I don't lose my money again. I just got paid and leave the apartment. Before I left, I made sure to leave my video camera filming my room. This was so long ago, it was a huge ass VHS tape camera that I had to hide on my bed under pillows and shit, but it still worked like a charm. I came back, replayed the tape, and 16 minutes in I see that motherfucker going through my shit. I tell you, I went cold as ice seeing Scene casually rifle through my things. My suspicions confirmed. I had to cool off with my friends across town over some beers. When I finally told them all what was happening, they started pulling out bats, hockey sticks and suggesting we go pay Scene a visit. As tempting as this was, I was now in college and didn't want to resort to messy violence. So instead I plotted my revenge. The first thing I did was to make sure my cool hippie third roommate was in the loop. Not having had a lot of time to get to know him, I asked him his thoughts on retribution and if he agreed with an eye for an eye. Confident we were on the same page, I showed him the video. He freaks out over having a thief for a roommate, but I reassure him to just be cool, cause some things are going to happen to Scene real soon. Then I went to stay at my parents' house and waited until that Thursday. You see, Scene liked to talk a lot. Turns out his rich parents had actually kicked him out of the house. The fact he'd actually found an apartment and gone back to school was a big success for him. On Thursday he'd be out of the apartment as his parents were having a big congratulatory dinner for him at their place. So I waited until I knew the dinner was underway, then called his house to speak to his mother. Crazy thing is, both he and his sister pick up the phone at the same time. So while his sister goes to get his mum on the line, he's asking me loudly why are you calling my mother, repeatedly. His mother gets on, and while Scene screaming at his mother to hang up, I calmly state I'm sorry to disturb you, but I have reason to believe your son has stolen from me. Suddenly, there's dead silence. After almost a minute, she replies take it up with Scene and just hangs up. WTF. I don't know what reaction I expected, but it wasn't that. Anyways, now with just Scene on the line, I tell him the jig is up. I have him on tape and I want my money back. His replies you have nothing on me, fuck you. At this point I realize, he's right. I'd really only filmed him rifling through my stuff. If I went to the police, the charges wouldn't stick, and there was a good chance he knew it. So by this point I'd tried very hard to be reasonable about things. but as it was, his rich parents couldn't care less. I had no real proof to go to the police with, and worst of all, I still had a year-long lease to live with him. So fuck that shit. I told him he'd better find another place to live, and hung up the phone as it was time to go nuclear on his ass. Remember how I said the putz talked too much? Turns out he'd bragged about how he'd faked his credentials for the app, and landlord had never checked. So first step was to drive with my folks to the landlord's office and tell them to evict him for theft immediately. When they start telling me crap, like we'll have to take some time to review this matter, I immediately threaten a lawsuit over how they're liable as I can prove they never did the prescribed background check. My landlord goes pale and instantly promises everything I ask. I then take this moment to go downstairs for a minute, a statement witnessed by multiple people. I then go to Scene's room and take thousands of dollars of his expensive shit, stereo, TV, hockey jerseys, cologne, etc., and put it all outside on our enclosed/hidden fire escape. I then go straight back upstairs, hello alibi, and leave with my folks. First chance I get, I call my friends with the bats. Hey guys, who wants a new wardrobe and entertainment system? I give them the instructions on how to find all of Scene's stuff hidden in the unused back alley and chill with parents for the next 3 to 4 days. Upon my return to Apt, I'm greeted with awe by a highly entertained hippie roommate who gave me the play-by-play of what went down in my absence. Apparently, Scene returned from his dinner to an empty room devoid of any of his possessions, causing him to rampage through the Apt and curse my name. When Hippie innocently asked what's wrong Scene, he tells him that I stole all his stuff, but that his dad would get it back for him, as if, lol. The next morning his alarm clock was the landlord walking into his room and showing it to a potential tenant while informing him that he was evicted immediately. He would later be dumped by his rich girlfriend who was buying his groceries. You haven't changed Scene. Again with the lying and cheating, and disowned very publicly by his well-to-do dad. Indeed, his dad had come to the apartment only to tell Scene he was worthless and that, despite his crying and begging, he could not live back at the house. Desperate, Scene followed his dad outside and jumped on the hood of the car, pleading to go home. The dad had to drive to a nearby police station to have him removed. Last thing I heard, he was broke, dropped out of school, dumped by GF, and camping in a friend's backyard in a tent in Canada in November. TL. Dr. Roommate who I was nice to betrays my trust by lying and stealing from me, so I basically destroyed his life for at most $120 CAD. Edit. Addendum to show that I made the call that ruined Scene's homecoming dinner from my parents' place across town, and not my shared apartment. Posted by u/Kveldsen. Evil stepfather. TLDR at the bottom. I made a comment on a post, got way more upvotes and comments than expected, and u/Alex28-3 and u/Drake1 suggested I tell a more in-depth version of the story on a different sub. On that sub, u/XG4M3R suggested I post it here. When I was 15, my mom started dating a man she met on a dating website. I didn't like him the first time I met him, and 2 months later he moved into the house. About 3 weeks after he moved in, he took my skateboards, self-built half-pipe, ramps, BMX bike, ice hockey gear, and many other things to the dump one day while I was at school. He said he did this because he didn't want all of my crap cluttering up his garage. Maybe 2 months later he punched me in the stomach for the first time because I got up from the dinner table without asking to be excused. From there it has escalated into full-fledged beatdowns for the smallest perceived slight to his authority. One day he decided to take my extensive Pokemon card collection, even more extensive comic book collection, my Game Boy and PS2 with all the assorted games, and my fantasy and sci-fi book collection, and got rid of it all because 15 boys should be playing football and baseball, not being a ref ***** or nerd playing with Pokemon cards, and reading comics and books. I would like to add that he was a middle school teacher, and then his off-time refereed and umpired local middle and high school sports games. My mom never intervened, and in fact, acquiesced when he demanded that she stop giving me lunch money because the little shit will just spend it on comics and other gay shit. One day, I took maybe $3 and change out of his change jar so that I can buy a slice of pizza and some fruit punch during lunch at school because I was tired of being hungry. My twin sister was always a bit of an asshole and frequently blackmailed me into doing her chores from a young age. I was fed up and refused to do something, so she told him what I had done. This man actually called the police and pressed a larceny charge against me, and once the police had left, beat me senseless. At that point I ran away. When the cops found me and returned me to my home, I found out that I've been trying to talk my mom into sending me away to military school or something of that nature. I ran away again, and between having run away several times and the larceny charge ended up turning 16 in juvenile detention. I spent the next couple years miserable and afraid, frequently contemplating suicide. Once I left home, I didn't speak to my mom for several years. We eventually reconciled, and by that point they had married. I was a lot bigger than I had been as a young teenager and had gotten into weightlifting, so he no longer acted like he was going to punch me to make me flinch, much less actually hit me, and we basically avoided each other for the most part. My mother found out that she had stage 4 cancer and no longer wanted to waste any of the time she had left with him, so she had a lawyer draft up a separation agreement whereby he would receive a set amount of money upon separation and would have 45 days to retrieve his belongings from the house. He had spent his entire inheritance in 6 months and then had to sell his mother's house that he grew up in order to settle his debts shortly before they started dating. And my mother bought the house back from the bank before they married. She allowed him to keep the house and he moved back into his mother's house. My mother passed away about 9 months after their separation, and despite the agreement, have been allowing him to come and get his stuff piecemeal. I put an immediate end to that. I sold his baseball card collection, around $14k, and his autographed sports memorabilia, roughly $11k, and also sold all of his woodworking equipment, along with several finished pieces of furniture that he had made. $6,500 I think. I kept his mother's engagement ring, platinum band, 3 diamonds roughly 2 carats, wedding band, his coin collection. I also collect coins and some tools and other odds and ends. Around a month ago I ran into him at the grocery store. I told him what I had done as he was pushing his cart out towards his car, and he took a swing at me multiple times. Several of these punches missed, and the ones that they connect didn't have much effect because he's nowhere near as strong as he was 20 years ago in his 40s, and I'm no longer a skinny little 15-year-old. He continued to try to punch me as I called 911 and was actively ramming his grocery cart into my new Toyota as the police officers pulled into the parking lot. He was arrested for assault, communicating threats, and destruction of property. As a result, he lost his job and pension at the local middle school, and because he had never learned how to save money while married to my somewhat wealthy mother, ended up having to sell his mother's house because he hired an expensive lawyer thinking he could somehow beat the charges. My nephew, who was on the football team, made it well known to his friends that he not only had just been arrested and convicted of assault as well as other charges, but that he had also beat me as a child, caused several parents to call for him to resign from refereeing and umpiring for local sports games. My niece and my girlfriend's much younger sister are enrolled at the middle school where he worked, and say that he was not only universally disliked, but when he came up to the school to get his belongings, he made a big scene and ended up hysterically crying as he was leaving. At least that's what they've heard from the kids who were attending summer school at the time. His son, who he was equally abusive towards as a child, refused to take him in or help him out, so he ended up having to take a job as a cashier at Walmart so that he could afford the rent on his crappy little trailer in an absolutely awful neighborhood. Even though that Walmart is not the closest Walmart to my house, that is now the only place where I go grocery shopping or to purchase anything that I need. I purposely stand in line longer than I need to, just so that he can be the one who has the pleasure of ringing up my purchases. The first time I went through his line, he attempted to ring up multiple items more than one time to overcharge me, and when I called him on it said that I was mistaken. I asked for a manager, and the manager believed him that it was an accident, but he learned that he can't get away with that. The second time, I made sure to be as nice as possible and how to ask for a manager because he was overwhelmingly rude. The people in line behind me backed me up, and he got in some trouble for that. Every time I go there and step into line, I see him die a little bit inside, and it may be petty, but it gives me such satisfaction. Sometimes I'll say that I'm paying with exact change, and as I'm about to hand him the money I'll say, oh, I didn't realize I had rare coin from his collection in my pocket. I guess I'll pay cash. I just sold his expensive ratcheting wrench set, and so on Monday, when he works again, I'm going to go buy my daughter one of their better above ground pools, and as he's ringing it out, tell him I know that my daughter is just going to love this pool. It's not like I would have ever used those expensive ratcheting wrenches anyway. TLDR, asshole stepfather got rid of all of my prized possessions as a child and beat the crap out of me regularly. I ended up getting all of his prized possessions and selling most of them, and when I told him, he tried to assault me in public, which resulted in criminal charges, losing his job and his house. Now I get to see him all the time and rub his nose in it. Edit. Posted this on another sub. Had 3k upvotes and ridiculous awards. They removed it saying no felonies. I'm pissed. Can anyone help me find where I have done anything even remotely felonious? When I reach 1000 subscribers, I will be giving away a $25 Amazon gift card away. To enter, like, subscribe and leave a comment below.